Do you think load management is a major problem for the NBA?
Well, the only reason I think it's a major, the answer is yes. But the only reason I think it's a major problem for the NBA is because the NBA is a league that markets its stars. And so even if it's just a select few of players, if they're stars, it affects the product, which we all know it to be. One of the things that I wanted to, and I need y'all to put JJ on the screen because I want to make sure I'm looking at him when I say this. JJ, I'm going to defer to you. One of the things that, and people don't understand this, listen, let me tell you something about myself. I've covered the game of basketball for decades. I do not know more basketball than JJ Redick. I do not know more basketball than Jalen Rose or any player that played in the NBA. And I think that a lot of people, you see a lot of pundits and people who haven't played on y'all level, and I think where y'all have a right to be incredibly offensive. It's one thing for me to give an opinion, even if it's an educated one. That is entirely different than somebody that has the personal experience. So even though I've been in locker rooms and covered the NBA for decades, the reality of the situation is, to some degree, certain things I'm always going to be deferential. So this is not a debate. I'm going to defer to you. I'm just going to let you know where I stand and how I feel about it. What we've seen over the last few years, and you bring up and you bring up this very big point. Injuries are legit. When we think about load management, we think about Kawhi Leonard. When we think about load management, we've thought about the Anthony Davises. We're looking at a Zion Williamson, a Joel Embiid, people like that. All of those guys have legitimate injuries. They're not faking it. They're injured. They're actually hurt. That's why they're out. Here's where the problem comes in, Jay. And by the way, it's not just because of the players. Because a lot of times the players are right to get frustrated because people are talking about them sitting out when a lot of these decisions sometimes comes from upper management. And upper management makes them sit down. And we're not talking about that enough and how their will is imposed upon the players. But I think what you're seeing and what we've been seeing over the last few years, at least on occasions, guys are signing big-time contracts and literally managing themselves for their next contract, as opposed to prioritizing the contract that they just signed, that in some cases have been for 9 figures. And when you look at that and then you see guys, you're sitting on the bench, you're walking around, you're laughing, you're good, but for some reason, you can't be on the court. When you look at today's modern day technology and all the medical advancements that have taken place and what have you, and you juxtapose that to things that existed prior to these guys in their era, and you see the kind of things that guys had to play through, and somehow, some way they managed, whether it was practicing less to make sure they were playing game times and what have you. You look at today's NBA player, and there just seems to be a comfort level with missing games that did not once exist. When we say load management, what I think we have to be careful of is that it implies that people are resting and taking care of themselves as opposed to legitimately being hurt or injured. And I'm definitely sensitive to that. But I do think it's important that the audience hears from somebody like you who just retired a few years ago, who clearly knows what players go through. You're clearly in tune with all of that. You played in the league for over a decade. You know what the hell you're talking about. Educate all of us on the legitimacy of load management, the legitimacy or illegitimacy of load management being an issue, and enlighten us as it pertains to what we're seeing and what we should be looking for. I will defer to you on this subject.
Well, first of all, I'm going to agree with you, and I'm going to say that, yes, load management is a problem for the NBA. You mentioned the word product. Well, the consumers of that product are the fans, and the fans are shouting right now, we have an issue with this. We are buying tickets. We are trying to watch games. We're getting league pass. We can't watch our favorite players play. If your consumers in any business are screaming, hey, we have a problem with the product right now, you need to listen. I don't have a solution. I would like to explain some of this. You mentioned guys signing these huge contracts and then sort of waiting it out for the next contract. I don't necessarily disagree to an extent with that. I also think, given the size of these contracts now, though, the teams are doing everything they can to protect players and protect their investment so that players are at their peak and healthy come playoffs. Because given the amount of investment, given expectations, especially with this new group of owners over the last decade plus, the expectation, they all think they can win every year, which is not realistic, but that's the expectation. The game has changed. I myself on being available. You know, I would set a goal. I knew I was going to get hurt. I knew I might have a hamstring injury, a back injury, a wrist injury, whatever it may be. And I would always say at the beginning of the year, I'd like to play every game, but if I get to 75 out of 82, I'm happy with that, right? It wasn't about managing myself. It was about the expectation I'm probably going to get hurt. I only played in all the games, I think 2 years. 1 year I played in 65 of the 66 games in the lockout year, and Stan told me I could take the day off. It became harder and harder to play through an injury as my career progressed. Now, some of that was age, of course, but I took care of myself. I was as diligent as any player I was ever around about taking care of my body and making sure I did everything I could so that I was available come game time. But it became harder to play through injuries because of the nature of the game. Pace is up over the last 15 years. Pace is up a lot over the 90s. A lot, not the 80s, but a lot over the 90s. The space that you have to cover as a player is up. So you have a nagging hamstring injury, you have a nagging calf injury. Yeah, you're going to manage that a little bit differently in 2022, 2023.
Okay, so my thoughts. I agree with both of them guys. For instance, yeah, that fans coming to games and stars are sitting out and they're not hurt. Yeah, that's an issue. And I mean, it is entertainment. It's not the end of the world if they don't play, but that is messed up. Like, especially if you were to buy season tickets, and then the NBA is saying no, you can't get a refund. Come on now. Unless you can get a refund, that's different. But it's just, I mean, or they seem to be that they looking at it as if, I'm not thinking about no fans. I'm gonna sit out. I'm trying to save myself. And they do have a point when they saying, they preserving themselves for the next contract. I never thought about that. Yeah. And it's like Mr. Kawhi Leonard. It's like he started it off. And he's in and out of these lineups. He ain't play. What, he only played like 20-some games? Like, what? And like, and and they are correct about that, yeah, when you're legitimately hurt, then yeah, sit out. But, and it's like LeBron. It's like, how they say he had a foot injury, then he had an ankle injury, then a foot injury. Which one is it? And then he said 23 games. 23 games. This is the most 23 games that are going to be the most important of his career. Come on now. Really? It's not the most important. Because if you win, you win. If you don't win, you don't win. So what? So, and you can say you don't want to be out of the playoffs. If you're not in the playoffs, you're just not in the playoffs. It's nothing you could do about it. So you gonna play these games or you're not. Anthony Davis too. But in the Anthony Davis injuries, those be like accident injuries. Like, it's like how he falls though, how he comes down. He falls in ways that he can get hurt. LeBron too, he had them injuries too, where he rolled an ankle or something like that. But yeah, I think load management is a problem for the NBA. It's just if they just sitting out, then it's like, come on now, y'all just gonna not play. Hey, it's entertainment. It's for the money. Holla at y'all.